22.
Well, 20 minutes, and then we'll carry it over to 2, because I think 22 is the perfect number.
Well, if we start stopping at 20, we'll finish it.
Right, 22.
We already started, by the way.
22, did we?
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, 22 minutes worth of a podcast.
22 minutes worth of a podcast. We do have to do some housekeeping before we go any further. We completely forgot, the name change. The reason that we are now what to do with your explicit content instead of what to do with your porn is because I couldn't use the word porn in the title.
Yes. I think it was actually the word old was what they were objecting to. They didn't like it. They didn't like two young men like ourselves using the word old, because clearly pornography is not a taboo subject in the society.
Ageism. It's ageism.
Actually, is there anything such thing as pornography anymore?
I mean, it's online. I mean, one of the major...
But it's
I think all
far
the
more
sites,
prevalent than regular media is.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I think it is.
I don't know about that.
That's a huge industry.
It's a huge industry, but I don't know how.
Just because people don't talk about it doesn't make it non-prevalent, though.
I'm not saying it... I don't know. It's
I'm talking content-wise. I bet you it's... for the public, it's probably 80% of the use of internet.
Man, I tell you, if I could watch porn instead of having to do my assignments for my college class, I'd be doing that 80% of the time.
Well, see, that's what people tell me. People tell me they say you're such a good guy. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not such a good guy. God's a good God. But if it wasn't for him, I'd just be sitting at home looking at porn, which is why we have this topic of what to do with your old porn.
I feel like I would be listening to music mostly. So
you would.
I would.
Yeah.
But the reason we are able
Which is
to
why
use,
you're my hero.
The reason we're able to talk about. Well, my dad had this incredible porn collection. I mean, it was incredible. Like and I discovered it when I don't remember if I mentioned this on the previous episode or not. Because as you said, none of our family listens to this, so we can say whatever we want about it.
We've determined that.
And
so for our one listener that we have, hey, we love you.
Hey, we love you. So yeah, he had this huge Playboy collection, and I used to take the centerfolds out and I would sell them at school for 50 cents.
Did he not notice that you took the centerfolds out?
You know, I used to steal cigarettes from him as well. I mean, he clearly
it's kind of one of those
attention.
things where, like, okay, even if he catches you, how do you address it?
Yeah, it's really funny
because he knows he's not supposed to have it either.
Yeah. Kind of like we had this kid. I'm a special education teacher, so we had a student who brought in a Valentine's Day gift basket for his 13-year-old girlfriend. He's 13 as well, and in it had 2 vapes. Tobacco vapes. Mm-hmm. And so the kids, they're not supposed to have those. So he got suspended. And then we have this thing called a readmit meeting where the kid has to tell you why he was suspended and admit the wrongdoing. And so it came down to, you brought these vapes to give to your girlfriend. Well, you shouldn't have been going through my stuff.
Valid?
It's like, it's not valid.
Well, yeah,
you could see the vapes first of all.
Yeah.
We have a right to go through the kids' basket.
This is true.
It's like with my dad, coming to me and going, "Hey, you shouldn't be going through my porn." Well, you shouldn't be having porn, Dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, but aside from airing my father's, and in fact, when he passed, my mother kept a whole bunch of it, and I found some really weird stuff that he had purchased that I won't mention.
Thank you.
Like a
all right. Anyway,
so we do have to mention CFOX as well, because they have agreed to allow us to use their music for the podcast. I don't know if they'll ever listen to the podcast.
Well, the lovely William Fortier and his brother.
Yeah, Billy. Right?
Yeah, I don't think they're actually doing any music anymore. This is a little dated now.
It's a shame. They're very talented. We saw them.
Oh, they're still doing artistic. I mean, I know Billy's doing artistic stuff, but
hey, maybe he could produce our podcast. He's doing films and stuff. You should send him a link.
Oh, we'd be exciting to film.
I think he would do it.
It would come out on a Saturday, maybe.
We could add a visual element to our wonderful banter.
You couldn't hear that, but it was just me looking around the room.
It's like, what a visual element.
Well, you got a lot of visuals in here.
There's a lot of visuals, in this room. But, I would tell you I was afraid, too, today because my neighbors across the street, they're having this shindig. You see, they got a fire going on out there.
I heard that.
They're drinking the alcohol, making loud noises, but we can't hear them. But if you hear anything like that, and I know one of our episodes, the dog did appear. Dogs, I have 5 here. They appear on occasion in their barking form. But we got to come up with a topic. How many minutes are we in?
We're 5 minutes in, so we
That
just
is
got
a
to chatter
record.
for another 15 minutes and we're done.
We don't even have to come up with a topic. I've kind of determined that this, in some ways, could evolve into just because there is a question to open in the title and everything.
Mm-hmm.
This really could become like an Ann Landers Dear Abby, like an advice column in podcast form. What do you think?
That would be interesting.
Yeah. So
I don't know why anybody would ask us for advice. Of course, I don't know about you, but I've made a lot of mistakes.
So why? I feel like if you're going to ask people advice, you got to ask the people that have made the mistakes instead of the people that are perfect. I mean, the rich guys will tell you how they got rich, but they'll tell you how great they are, and not accept the fact that some of it was a little bit of luck.
There's a topic right there.
Rich guys.
Rich guys. Many, many moons ago, when I was in the bigger, better, faster, more stage of my business, I was in, I think we were in Texas at a business symposium, and I knew there was another cleaner. I have a carpet cleaning business for 30 some odd years now. There was another guy there. He was a small owner-operator like myself, did not have any children. So it was just him and his wife, but he was clearly making bank, which interested me to figure out how he did it. And at the time, I was in, we'll just say, a fair bit of financial debt, which nowadays it doesn't even sound that bad because everything's so ridiculously priced because I'm old. But at the time, I think I had upwards of $65,000 worth of credit card debt.
Nice.
Yeah, not really. And the reason we accumulated it is so when you're in business for yourself, you have to pay your taxes yourself instead of relying on your employer to do everything that they didn't teach you how to do in school. And there's another topic. So anyway, I knew I had to get out of financial debt. And I knew making more money didn't seem to solve the problem because I, seemed to have found ways to spend it as fast or faster than I could make it. So anyway, rather than paying my taxes quarterly like I should, we played the shell game, which was basically you just find a credit card with low interest and you pay your taxes off the credit card because it's only, like 2%, 3%, and you just keep shifting the shells until, you can't shift them anymore. But I mean, interest rate wise, it was down there. I think this is going back a long time. I think we were at I think we were paying $700 or $800 a month in credit card bills, which again, nowadays doesn't seem bad because you got people driving around with cars that they're paying $1,100 a month on, which I don't get. But, so that was the case. So after we broke for the day, I went and followed this guy and started asking him questions. And you talk about, rich people. I mean, you can ask somebody a question, but if they haven't made the mistake, they don't really know the answer. Well, my problem was this guy had never made the mistakes.
Yeah.
He was obviously just either gifted with finances, or his wife was, or had perhaps come from a family that had means and they, schooled him in how to manage it. Not so much here. So I told him what was going on. I was very blunt about it with the credit cards and all this, that, and the other. He goes, well, first thing you got to do when you get back is you got to call and cancel your credit cards. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And we talked for a while, and he made it sound, relatively simple. So I'm like, I can handle this. So when I got home from that trip, it was kind of ludicrous, but again, it's another one of those dumb things you do in your youth. I taped all my credit cards together, and they literally went from floor to ceiling, and I had really high ceilings in this house. They were like 9 foot. So I taped them all together and hung them over the shredder and just shredded them all. We were not going to use them again. The problem is that...
is this during your first marriage? Or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because I
Denise
can't
and I
see
don't
you getting into
Denise,
this kind of issue
no,
with
Denise
your
and
wife.
Denise and I do not go down the credit road.
Yeah.
We've both made plenty of, been involved in plenty of mistakes that way.
There you go.
Yeah, we drive old paid for cars and just, that's not a struggle. So we, that comes from making the mistakes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I shredded all the credit cards. It took like 5 minutes for them all to go through the shredder. There were so many of them. But knowing the history of the household, I also knew that they like to send you those. They used to send checks to your house, blank ones.
Mm-hmm.
And you can fill the checks out. Well, the problem is with those checks. This is the experience talking. With the checks, they would automatically ding you for the very highest rate they possibly could, without going to the highest rate they have.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd usually be 18, 21%. So even if I got rid of the credit cards, the household, is that a polite way to put it?
Yeah.
Okay. The household would find other ways of spending money on these checks, which I didn't want. So I decided the prudent thing to do would be to call into all these credit card companies and close out the accounts completely. I'm going to close it out. I'm going to keep paying what I pay on the credit card, and everything's going to be good. Wrong. That is literally the worst thing you can do.
Wow.
Yes, this is experience talking. So the reason that is the worst thing you can do is when you close a credit card, whatever rate you had, you're not their client anymore. They care less about you. They jack you to the highest rate they possibly can. So every credit card that I had at the time, which was $65,000 in credit card debt, went up from, some of them were at 0.5%, 2-3%, things like that, jumped to 21 to 24.5% literally overnight.
Yeah, so you probably had what was called an introductory or a teaser rate.
Right, that's what you did. You played the shell game and you just keep moving around. So I would like to say, thankfully, I think this culture and this generation is getting out of that, but there's also an undertow to that, and that seems to be happening now, where corporations are just coming in and buying everything and making you rent things and lease things like cars and houses now. It's unimaginable to me. And I don't mean to be a doomsdayer, but I mean, it's just, me being an old guy, I guess, how these younger people, anybody under the age of 40 that doesn't have a house currently, is ever going to be able to have a house, because corporations are coming in and literally buying them and driving the right prices through the roof and then renting them to them. So anyway, I shredded the credit cards, called in, closed the line of credits, and my interest rates jumped overnight. So I went from paying $700-800 a month in credit cards to close to $1,700 a month.
Ooh.
Yeah. So needless to say, it was not a solid move. So I ended up going through one of these. Well, it was actually consumer credit counseling, which is the only one you want to actually go to. You don't want to go to these other scam ones. I mean, you're gonna get hosed on them no matter what.
Yeah.
Because that one's even owned by the credit card companies. But at the very least, they discount your price or your rate that you're paying to a somewhat reasonable rate, and you just agree to pay that until it's paid off. But you have no credit while you're doing it, none. So I paid, I think it was $1,200 or $1,300 for 5 or 6 years straight with no credit card, no credit access at all until it was paid off. But I did get it paid off, and the fortunate thing about it is once you pay it off, your credit score goes to through the roof. So it was up to 8 something after you pay it all off, which at that point you don't care because you're never going to use credit again. Yeah. So that's getting back to you don't want to necessarily ask advice from people that don't haven't made the mistakes. Yeah. That is one thing I will give people advice on, is getting out of credit card debt and what not to do.
Money is a difficult topic to broach, I think. And I know as a school teacher, there's been discussions for years about, we should have some kind of financial literacy course and all this other stuff. And I think what's odd, in my case, I've got, my sister, Kathleen, I don't really communicate with my sister Karen, but then I've got 3 sons and, wife and all that other stuff. And we all have incredibly different approaches to money. Mm-hmm. My son, Trevor, you mentioned about a house. So he's in the process of trying to buy a house, and he is in the opposite situation that you were in. He's never established credit. Even when he got a car loan, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, it was the first loan he ever had beyond his student loans. He has this really negative feeling about credit to the point where it can damage him. He's so far at the end of that spectrum. Mm-hmm. Whereas Tom, he's amassed a lot of debt, but he's got a small child and a lot of things like that have kind of, and a wife with an illness, so he's had to deal with the jungle of, trying or juggling, I should say, not jungling, juggling different kinds of debts and things like that. So I guess to some degree, it's also a bit circumstantial, My parents, my dad, with his porn collection, I mean, he tried to kill himself.
I'm surprised you weren't rolling in it after you sold all that.
No, I wish I didn't sell any of it, honestly, because all the centerfolds were pulled out. They weren't
Folks, this is the
anymore.
question. This is the point in the podcast where you're going, well, Tom, what did you do with it all then?
We did have a garbage bag that was like in the house somewhere that the boys used to look at when they were younger, and I found that out later, which we joked about the bag of porn that was handed down from son to son.
Hence the title for the podcast.
Yeah, we finally answered the question.
One thing you don't do with old porn is hang on to it and put it in your basement with your teenage sons in the house.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, my parents, my dad, he tried to kill himself and did enough damage so that he couldn't work by the time I was, I think, 8 years old or something like that. And I didn't find out till much later that they had just lived. He was on disability, Social Security disability, and he just lived on credit card debt because he was in Brighton, which is a pretty well-to-do community near Rochester, and just tried to keep the house. And I mean, when everything kind of came down, I mean, it came down. I mean, they had a nasty bankruptcy, lost the house, just everything kind of fell apart on him. It was a shame, but
it's not fun.
No,
I mean, when you're going through life and making those mistakes.
No, and that's the thing is that if you think about it, this almost goes back to the I like to call it the meatloaf money syndrome. And the musician Meatloaf, he has this record come out and nobody expects it to be a hit, and then it's one of the top 10 selling albums of all time. So he has the pressure to put out another one, so he's got contractual obligations, and he isn't able to put out the second record because he blows his voice out and has all kinds of issues. He's living at a certain lifestyle because he thinks, I'm going to be living at this lifestyle for the rest of my life. And he burns through all of his money, and you just don't anticipate that. So, I mean, you're getting credit at a point in your life where you are credit worthy. And the problem is you almost have to be of the mentality that you have to use it in a way, or at least even
pretend you're not worthy of it.
Yeah. So that's Trevor's mentality, which I guess is good because he's, he lived. I mean, we were growing up. He saw poverty. I mean, we were on food stamps. We had to seek public assistance multiple times. I mean, he sort of was engrossed into poverty and very, very and keenly aware of it. So I think that has sort of shaped his attitudes about money. I mean, you and I have talked off the podcast just about homelessness and things like that. And one of the things that you work on a ministry called Hands for Hope where you give out people, and I think
we don't give out people.
We give out food to people. Maybe we should edit that. No, we're going to leave that in. We just hand out free people. It's like, I thought slavery was illegal, but no, they're not handing out.
You'll like
any
this
people.
one. She's nice. She's a little mouthy, but if you can get her under control.
So you give out, food, clothes, things like that. And one of the things that comes up periodically is if somebody pulls up in a Cadillac Escalade and they need to get a handout, so to speak. And there's always these people that have this disgusting, oh my God, well, if you can afford a Cadillac Escalade, then why are you seeking food? Well, 3 months ago, you could afford a Cadillac Escalade.
Right.
Somebody tries to kill themselves, somebody gets injured, somebody gets sick.
Your disability doesn't go through when you had a major surgery.
Your company gets bought out,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so that's the tough part is that it almost feels like that if the higher you're at, well, the old expression, the higher you are, the farther you can fall. So that's where I think the credit card debt can be deadly. I mean, the good news about credit card debt in terms of when you do have issues is that it is something that you can usually work through in bankruptcy court, either through reorganization and things like that. I mean, with a house, there's not as many alternatives. And when you have those secured loans, you could lose things. But then when you get to the point where the cycle starts and you've discharged some debt, now you need a car. How do you get a car if you don't have any credit in this economy? It's a conundrum.
I think the whole economy of the country or the world is changing anyway, though, like I said, because like the credit card thing, yeah, that was a great money maker for those that had to make money back in the day, as far as, the investors and the credit card or the banks and different things like that. And that worked out really well. But now you have, people with making $310 billion a year and deciding they want to take a trip into space. And meanwhile, you have other people with $100,000 worth of student loan debt trying to figure out how they're ever going to be able to afford to buy a house.
Right. Yeah.
It's a little different society than it was 20 years ago in that regard.
And the tax structure is different. I mean, at one point you could, is that our 20-minute alarm?
Tis.
Yeah, it is. So we're going to leave that one in too. But yeah, I mean, there was a point where you could deduct credit card debt. So again, if you were financially savvy, and I think if you're disciplined enough to be able to put stuff on credit cards that have 0 interest rate. I mean, when we got our furniture for this house, we had 0% interest rate, and I was always taught, as long as you can pay it before the interest kicks in, take the free money. So those situations can work out where you're able to get some things that maybe you were not liquid enough for.
Now there you come up to the Dave Ramsey thing.
Well, but again, it circles back to,
then you get into the whole cash is king type of thing.
Well, but I mean, the thing is, but again, that 0% interest rate.
No, I'm not quantifying Dave Ramsey's podcast or Dave Ramsey's methods.
I don't even know Dave Ramsey's method.
I have different opinions on that one too.
But yeah, I mean, the point is there is 0% interest, and which is all fine and dandy. But break your leg and you're not able to work. I mean, then eventually you're going to start falling behind on payments, the penalties, and all that stuff. And I think that's where that's how they kind of.
Well, it's a gambling game.
It is a gambling game. Yeah. That's why they give it. It is 0% interest for you as long as you can pay it, but it's not 0% interest for everybody. Which is a great way to wrap up this podcast. Any final thoughts, Jack?
No, not on this one.
Podcast episode. I don't want to say we're wrapping up the podcast. I've already talked about giving away people. We're not giving away people, but if you do want to give us a nice review and not give away people, we would appreciate that. And of course, thanks again to CFox.
Those of that one of you that's listening, hey, thanks.
And if you are a family member that's listening to this podcast.
If you're a family member that's listening to this podcast at this point, I will give you $50.
There you go.
I will say this right now because I guarantee you no one in our family is listening to this podcast.
I'll do 15.
I'll do 50. You do 15.
Yeah, I'll do 15. All right. Well, very good. Well, thanks for listening to What to Do with Your Explicit Content / porn, whatever you want to call it, the world's greatest advice column in podcast form. I'm going to tag that as our new line.
Go for it.